Listen, there's no excuse for you to not have won your Oscar pool because right on the show, we told you who was going to win. And for the most part, we were right. The Oscars were last night, and Anora is a big winner. 5 Oscars, including Best Picture. There's a lot to unpack. The group chat's here. Let's go. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Okay, look, last night was the Oscars. That is Hollywood's most celebrated nights, and it gave us a moment like this one.
I loved Anora. I really did. Yeah, I loved Anora. Yeah, true story. Little fact for you, Anora uses the F word 479 times. That's 3 more than the record set by Carla Sofia Gascon's publicist. You tweeted what?
That is Conan O'Brien hosting the 2025 Oscar Awards for the first time ever, I should say. And if you've been paying attention to this year's Oscars race, then you know how much of a roller coaster ride it has been. The group chat is here. Sarah-Tai Black is here. Rad Simonpillai is here. And a very tired, very sleepy, from Los Angeles, Eli Glasner is also here. Sarah-Tai and Rad and Eli, welcome to the show, friends. How's it going?
Thanks for having us. We're surviving.
Hello. And what a delight. Eli, I gotta say, you've been to the Oscars more times than Conan O'Brien has been. Yesterday was his first time at the show, his first time hosting the show. Talk to me about how he did his first time out. How did he do?
I love the roast of the best pictures. And it's funny because like they're always making fun of the movies. That's generally the opening monologue. But I think it was always so innocuous that it never really stuck. Whereas like Conan just went in and that clip you just played, like it's a good joke. But what was even more fun was the crowd going, oh,
yeah,
like yeah, he went there. And so like the fact that he went in on Netflix and on the running time of The Brutalist and on Carla Sofia Gascon and more and more. And so I love that. I don't know if it's Conan or the writers. This was the funniest Oscars in recent memory. It was a great opening monologue. And I just love the kind of absurd, chaotic energy that Conan brings to what he does. And I really feel like it freshened things up.
Sarah-Tai, I gotta say, like Conan, famously not an especially political comedian, but every once in a while he gets a good jab in. You kind of go like, "Oh, Conan, I didn't know that you had that one in you." How do you feel about how he did last night?
Yeah, I mean, he's always been relatively good at being able to punch up. He was kind of like the people's late night host, and it was, as Eli said, it was really refreshing. It's really hard to get a laugh out of me personally. I think I was born like I truly like came out of the womb and I was like, you're not gonna make me laugh. But I chuckled audibly several times, which is like an amazing seal of approval.
Yeah.
I thought having him steward the firefighters roasting the audience and the nominees was a great kind of momentary reversal of the dynamic of that room. And I think that, Conan's not someone we think of as like a film buff or anything, but if you've paid attention, you can tell that he has a sincere love of movies and the people that make them. And I think that was reflected throughout the broadcast in a great way, rather than like just complaining that every movie is too long and like continuing the like anti-intellectual streak that has been happening in terms of talking about movies in mainstream spaces like this for a long time now.
Yeah, I was in fact very grateful to not have a single these movies are too long joke yesterday, because as much as the movies are a little long these days, it was not necessary to kind of return to that theme. Also, can I just say, Sarah-Tai, I'm going to update the Wikipedia page for last night's Oscars and say, and made Sarah-Tai Black chuckle out loud several times.
Like several times. I was looking down at myself like, oh.
Who are they? What is happening here? Okay. Rad, let's get to the big winners of yesterday. What were the ones that stood out for you?
I mean, look, like obviously Anora being the big winner wasn't a complete surprise prize, but
Best Picture,
Best Picture,
Best Editor, Best Director,
Yeah.
Best Actress. I'm forgetting one. I can't remember what it was.
Editing.
Best Screenplay.
Screenplay.
That's what I was
Yeah.
forgetting.
Yeah. Well, and what's lovely about that is, I mean, like Sean Baker going up 4 times, tying Walt
Because he was the
Disney
editor and the director and the
yeah. And so, like, I mean, you know, if last night was a celebration of the artisans and the craftsmen, like that we really felt in a lot of the presentations, we also felt it in Sean Baker being like the one guy having to go up and being like a truly indie filmmaker, wearing all these hats and celebrating that. The other big part of that win is like, look, part of the reason why we didn't suspect Anora to be the winner for a little while until recently is because it's a sex worker narrative, and we didn't think the Oscars would go that far. And you know, we could hold space for some of the criticisms for that movie in terms of having a certain male gaze and maybe not, you know, certain missteps in the movie. But I think the fact that it went all the way, the fact that we got to in their acceptance speeches, Sean Baker's acceptance speech, but also Mikey Madison when she won Best Actress, where they got to celebrate the sex worker community. They talked about the consultants they worked with in crafting the story. One of them being Canadian, Andrea Wareham,
friend of the show.
Yeah, exactly. So to have those moments, I thought were really lovely. And you know, Mikey saying like her favorite experience in making this movie was getting in touch with that community, working with that community, becoming an ally of that community, continuing to celebrate that community. I thought that was a lovely, like it was a moment of progress. For that award show.
I really loved the multiple Sean Baker speeches, Eli, and the fact that he kept on sort of getting up there. But the one that really stuck out for me was the one where he said, you know what we need is to return to movie theaters. Because he is an indie filmmaker. He's like, I don't make movies for your streaming screen. I make movies to put them in a movie theater. And we are losing screens, and also we're losing the ability to get an independent filmmaker to actually have the ability to deliver their film all the way to a screen near you. That stood out for me. It's been a sort of a running theme of his entire awards run, but he kind of like brought it home yesterday at the Oscars. What about you, Eli? What moments and what wins stood out for you?
Well, staying with Anora, I heard a sound in the press room at the Oscars that I've never heard before. And it was the combination of wow and oof. And so you got kind of woof.
Wow.
And that was the sound when Mikey Madison won and Demi Moore lost. And so it was this like, oh, like people like in pain, but also surprise, and just this kind of gasp and a cheer, but also I think people who were focused on Demi Moore's face for that moment and realizing that this narrative that many of us had bought into, it wasn't going to be that. And in almost a substance-like way, you know, you had the actress who was in her 60s and the actor, the ingenue, who was 25. And voters went with Mikey, who is remarkable, who transformed herself. I mean, it's such an amazing performance that when I interviewed her in person, I had to catch myself because I was like, well, the energy is so different. Oh yeah, Eli, it's called acting. That was a standout. Yeah, I mean, you know, like, oh yeah, right? That's what they do.
That's the job.
But also I want to share, I'm Still Here, that moment when it won for Best International Feature in Los Angeles. This circuit around the Oscars, there's been so many Brazilians who have bumped into people. They have come for Fernando Torres. They've come to support this movie about a disappearance during the brutal dictatorship. And there were cheers, there were people in the press room yelling, Brazil, Brazil. I saw a video from a control room in Rio where they were running the news, and bedlam. It was like a football match. So that was, I mean, just the power of a film like that, which was nominated in 3 categories to kind of give that country something to rally around, and then to hear the eruptions even backstage, it was a beautiful thing.
Yes, that was beautiful. Okay, Sarah-Tai, what stood out for you, pal?
I feel like I very much watch the Oscars as a critic, which is not the most enjoyable time a lot of the time. Because there is like, you know, the very Oscars phenomenon of over-nomination of certain films alongside like the recency bias that a lot of people have been talking about for years. You know, I wrote down a fact, like only 35 features are nominated this year. It was the lowest total since 1991. So it gets a little tiring sometimes to see the exclusion of other films that, you know, especially when we're reading and hearing about all these anonymous interviews from Academy members who are like, I didn't watch the film. I didn't know that film's too long. Like, you realize that this isn't really the award of merit that it should be. But that said, it's always nice to see someone who did a fantastic job win an award, like Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain. I think that was a great choice. Hairstyling, makeup for The Substance, of course. I love to see Conclave win for adapted screenplay, just because has this whole Oscar season not been Conclave? Have we not all been sequestered? Have we not all been sequestered to the Conclave?
Yeah.
And, you know, just to go back to being a critic, it's kind of like choosing between the lesser of two evils. So I was glad to see Anora was doing a lot of work of blocking a certain film that has upset an entire nation. More on that later, Elamin.
Actually, more on that right now. But let's just get there, because even though the film in question, which is Emilia Perez, it got shut out of, I think, 18 nominations, 14 nominations, and 2 wins. One of the wins was winning Best Supporting Actress for her role in Emilia Perez. This is Zoe Saldana's speech.
I am a proud child of immigrant parents with dreams and dignity and hardworking hands, and I am the first American of Dominican origin to accept an Academy Award, and I know I will not be the last. The fact that I'm getting an award for a role where I got to sing and speak in Spanish. My grandmother, if she were here, she would be so delighted. This is for my grandmother, Argentina CC. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Okay, let me just correct myself there. Emilia Perez got 13 nominations, ended up winning 2 of them yesterday, and that is one of them, Zoe Saldana winning for Best Supporting Actress. Rad, obviously, the campaign for Emilia Perez went off the rails, and it went off the rails in part because Toronto journalist Sarah Hagi, she found these tweets from Carla Sofia Gascon, the star of Emilia Perez, and the tweets were just like incredibly racist. Netflix had to retool their Oscar campaign, let's say. That's like the gentle way to say it. They took Emilia Perez herself off like most of the actual advertising material to say, please vote for Zoe Saldana. Yeah. This is about Zoe Saldana. And in fact, Netflix ends up winning that. You know, the campaign did in fact work. What'd you make of that moment?
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting listening to her speech where it's like, it's obviously a big moment for her and she's emotional and she wants to celebrate her moment, but she's also trying to rewrite the narrative around Emilia Perez and trying to project certain meaning. I mean, you heard her reference her immigrant family background, and of course she's then trying to project this meaning where this is a way to stick it to Trump, right, and his anti-immigration policies. Yeah. And then she made it about a celebration of women and, you know, like wanting to project that meaning on it. But then it's interesting that she erased certain women, right? And especially, I mean, like neither her nor the other Emilia Perez winners, the songwriters who won for El Mal, neither of them mentioned trans lives or mentioned trans women, and you know, and when that was ostensibly what your movie was built around. So it's interesting that where they're still trying to salvage some relevance around this movie and prop it up in a way that it just does not deserve to be propped up.
I feel like you need something to do with your hands. Can I just hand you this hand lighter? Okay, all right. Sarah-Tai, we've talked a lot about Emilia Perez because there was a moment when it was, you know, the darling of the awards season. And we sort of get to this moment where those unearthed tweets cast this incredible large shadow over the film going to the Oscars, as they should. Ends up winning 2 of the 13 nominations. What did you make of the final Oscar tally for this movie and the way the conversations changed around it?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When the telecast ended, I was beaming. I was so happy to see this film. I'm not even joking. I had some self-awareness to be like, am I a miserable person? And it's like, maybe I am, but I've been made miserable by this film. You know, I'm not inherently miserable. I was made this way. Yeah. So I was very glad to see that it was not awarded all of those 13 nominations, because that's just truly delusional. I think that, you know, the irony of Emilia Perez in terms of its Oscars campaign, in terms of Zoe Saldana and her speech, is that it's so deeply problematic, but it's selling itself on this very reductive identity politics that's at work. I really took issue with the fact that Zoe was like, I'm the first person of Dominican origin. I'm like, no, you're the first person of Dominican descent. And I'm not trying to be pedantic, but those mean very different things. You know, it's, you know, to have your career as someone born in New Jersey, born in America, is very different than to have your career as someone born and raised in the Dominican. But yeah, even seeing win for the best song, Camille, the French songwriter, singing out loud. I've never had that much secondhand embarrassment.
She sang at the end of her speech, and I wanted, that was the only moment where I was like, I can't look at this in the eye. Like, I can't keep looking at my
I had to
television.
pick my phone up. Yeah, I had to pick my phone up and like pretend that I was looking at something. Mind you, I'm alone in my house. I don't know who the performance is for. I just had to escape from this, you know. And as Rad said, like, this could have been an important use of their platform to highlight the way, specifically in America and Mexico, that trans lives are being curtailed, literally and figuratively, and legislatively, but they just don't care. They just don't care. They don't mention the trans community, as Rad said. They don't mention Mexico. The fact that Camille, the songwriter, thanked Carla and Zoe for being translators for their songs, I'm like, you literally couldn't even care to hire Spanish songwriters just to collaborate, you know. And a lot of folks saw after the Oscars in the press room, Zoe Saldana was speaking with that Mexican journalist who rightfully so brought up the issues that literally the entire nation of Mexico has with this film. And Zoe gave that very canned stock response that was very deflective while very also manipulative at the same time, like saying, I'm willing to talk with anyone who comes to me. And it's like, well, you're being talked to right now, so give us a proper answer. And you know, the answer of I'm very sorry that Mexicans felt offended, you know. And she said, I don't share your opinion that the heart of the film is Mexico. Like, that's a wild thing to say about this like film that is very much like a narco telenovela, to say that this has nothing to do with Mexico. You're just showing your ignorance. And I think that if an entire country is upset with you, that's something to consider a little bit more deeply.
That is putting it truly quite mildly. If folks are just joining us, my name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion, and we are talking all things Oscars 2025. Sarah-Tai Black is here, Rad Simonpillai is here, and Eli Glasner is here. Okay, I want to talk about a moment that really stuck out for me from last night's Oscars. This is a bit of the acceptance speech by the Israeli and Palestinian filmmakers of No Other Land, because they won for Best Documentary Feature Film.
When I look at Basel, I see my brother, but we are unequal. We live in a regime where I am free under civilian law, and Basel is under military laws that destroy his life and he cannot control. There is a different path, a political solution without ethnic supremacy, with national rights for both of our people. And I have to say, as I am here, the foreign policy in this country is helping to block this path. And
that is Yuval Abraham. He's one of the filmmakers of No Other Land. He's the Israeli filmmaker, and then there's other filmmakers, of course, involved. The other Israeli filmmaker is Rachel Zor, and then two Palestinian filmmakers, Basil Adra and Hadnan Balal. So this is a documentary that is situated in the occupied West Bank, and as you just heard there, Yuval's criticizing the U.S. for its foreign policy. Eli, your thoughts on that moment, because it felt like a really big surprise, actually, in the room when No Other Land won.
It was a surprise, and this was a show that tried to keep politics at bay. That, like, even the opening monologue, while hilarious, was kind of very safe and not exactly pointed when it comes to the effects of the new administration in Washington. And the fact that the filmmakers called out directly the Trump administration, I think, is so powerful. And even if you go beyond that film, I mean, in the documentary world at large, we have seen a chilling effect. We have seen not just No Other Land, but other films with politics that aren't being seen, that distributors are afraid to pick up. And the beautiful thing, one of the many beautiful things about this film, is that relationship at its core of Basil and Yuval, who are Palestinian and Israeli, and yet as the film just lets them be in that space, you see that they're not that dissimilar, but of course one has freedoms and the other doesn't. And it's a film like that that took the time to show us those connections and how, as he said so eloquently, they are intertwined. But while the film shows us that, we can't see the film in so many places. It has luckily been distributed in parts of Canada. I believe it is playing right now in Toronto, not so much in the United States. They've been self-distributing it. Yeah. The fact that we need to get to the point where the movie won an Oscar, and now maybe it will be on screens in America, just shows you the state of distribution right now and the challenges that important films such as this really face.
A couple of things really stuck out for me, Sarah-Tai, about the win from No Other Land. Number one, Guy Pearce, who was wearing a sort of a ceasefire pin, has been wearing a ceasefire pin the entire sort of award season.
He was wearing a Free Palestine pin.
He was wearing a Free Palestine, exactly right. Wearing a Free Palestine pin yesterday, sort of shaking hands with Bassel as he was sort of walking up. Bassel Adra using the stage in that moment to talk about ethnic cleansing in Palestine explicitly, which is like you don't hear that often on an Oscar stage. And then you get to the reality that Eli just highlighted, which is that still, right now, to this date, No Other Land does not have a distributor in the United States. Do you see a moment like this one transforming the ways that No Other Land is maybe being distributed?
I mean, I hope so. I really do. But I can't help but feel kind of stuck in a pessimism in terms of the industry's politically cowardice. The fact that this film doesn't have any distribution at all, when it's not that politically radical of a film. It's a film that's advocating a two-state solution. It's a film where you see kind of a quote unquote both sides approach. And that's not to denigrate at all the Palestinian filmmakers and people we hear and see from and witness. But there is a reason this film got nominated and not a film directed only by Palestinians. That's not a coincidence. In 2013, we saw Five Broken Cameras was nominated. That was another film that had an Israeli co-director, and Israel became very centered in the press tour. And I think even in the acceptance speech, you can see kind of that tension happening where Yuval is like, and the hostages from October 7th. And it's like, well, if you were actually like an ally to Palestinians, you would know that to bring that up on stage is a false equivocation. So yeah, I remain confused, but not surprised that it doesn't have distribution, given the fact that it is a very liberal film. This isn't like agitprop. It's very much of its time, for better and for worse. You mean
liberal as in sort of a centrist, at its core, yes. It's not like a sort of radical film. It's like at its core, it's a relatively sort of centrist liberal film.
But I do hope this opens the door for No Other Land in terms of more distribution opportunities, as well as for more Palestinian directors.
Rad, let me kick it over to you. I think the reception to No Other Land feels to me completely out of step with the ways it has been celebrated, both by critics and now winning this Oscar. There's obviously a distance between the audience that is craving No Other Land and the, let's say, systems that are willing to distribute it.
Yeah, I'm just going to repeat what Sarah-Tai Black said about, the cowardice in this industry, that they won't touch this movie, even though it's been winning prizes for well over a year now. I mean, the prizes began when it premiered at the Berlin Film Festival, won the top prize there. And the fact that this film is so urgent, so emotional, so powerful, and clearly, you saw the response to the film in that room. It got a standing ovation and stuff. And so, it's a powerful moment to have the Palestinian filmmaker take the stage and say, like, you guys are contributing to this the violence that Palestinians are facing. You are contributing to this ethnic cleansing and all of these things. So that was a powerful moment to me. I don't know when everyone else is going to have the opportunity to catch up to this movie, but it's important that they do. And I mean, we've had free screenings here in Toronto to make that happen. That was the way I could catch it. For Viola at Hot Dog. So it's like we're doing everything we can to get this movie seen, and that should be the mission.
I'm going to give you guys each an opportunity to just kind of like reflect on the Oscar as a whole. Clearly a show that was supposed to end at 10:30 did not end at 10:30. It just kept on going on and on and on. We got literally 30 seconds to each of you to reflect on, maybe give the Oscars an overall rating. Eli, I'll start with you.
7 out of 10.
Okay.
Like they still need to shake themselves up. I mean, it's still like defaulting to, let's do a variety show, let's do some music, let's do some performances. Whereas like you have actors, you have drama, you could do more filmic things. You could put actors on stage. And so I was excited at the beginning with Conan and the energy that he brought, but I still feels like the same kind of typical awards that we've seen the past couple of years from the Oscar producers. So there's better to do there.
We didn't even get to talk about the music. There was so much music going on there that was like, oh, we could do more with this.
There was a whole R.I.P. Bond tribute.
Even though Bond is still very much allegedly alive. Sarah-Tai, 20 seconds to you, pal.
I feel exactly the same as Eli. A strong 7 out of 10, which is a compliment for me given the Oscars. But as a 90s kid, I'm still very much chasing the high of seeing Whoopi Goldberg dressed up as Queen Elizabeth when I was 10 years old. So I look forward to having a moment like that in the future.
Rad, you've been robbed of your time. You got 15 seconds.
Oh my God. Well, I'm going to say I did enjoy so much of that show, but then there was also this weird underlying strain of misogyny throughout the show. And I'm referring to Conan O'Brien introducing Scarlett Johansson as a hall pass. I'm referring to Adrian Brody throwing his gum at his partner when he's going on stage. I'm referring to that animated short filmmaker stealing the phone from his wife during the speech. Like, yeah, there was a lot there that we need to unpack.
Okay, well, we're out of time to unpack it today, but thank you so much for being here. This is Commotion. My name is Elamin. We will see you tomorrow.